Welcome to my channel where OP sleeps with the devil. Our next Reddit post is from Zora. This happened at my ex-boyfriend's parents' home about 20-ish years ago. I was staying over for a few days and was sleeping in their guest room. It was a bit creepy because it had those accordion closet doors that didn't quite close completely, so I had to put this bench against it to keep it shut. There was also this weird old-fashioned looking doll on the desk, so at night I made sure to put that in the closet too. I have no idea how late it was. There wasn't a clock in the room and the room was super dark, which I loved. Anyway, I was sleeping on my stomach with my hands, arms tucked underneath me when I felt what felt like 3 fingers poking into my right calf. It pressed 3 times. It woke me up, but I didn't open my eyes because something told me not to. I listened for a bit. If it was my boyfriend, he would at least be saying my name. Nothing. I was a bit freaked, and I don't really know how long it took me to fall back asleep, but I did. I don't know how much time had passed, and I felt that same 3 presses pokes on the lower right side of my back. Again, I didn't open my eyes because I was terrified, thinking that if I saw something darker than the darkness in that room, I would die. I kept my eyes closed but tried to listen to any sort of sound. Nothing, total silence. I eventually fell back asleep and some more time passed and I felt those same 3 pokes presses near my right upper back. I remember freaking out since it seemed to be crawling closer to my head. I couldn't hear anything. It was complete silence. Even though my eyes always remained closed, I could still sense it was night and that the room was really dark. Eventually, I woke up because it was morning. I knew this because I could hear people moving outside of my room. I told my boyfriend what happened, and he said that he was a bit freaked out by it all too, and that I should probably just change rooms. His parents came in later that morning, and they had never heard of anything strange happening in that room. Then, a couple of nights later, I was back asleep in that room. There wasn't a lamp on the bedside table, so I could turn off the light when I was in bed. The light switch was right by the door to the bedroom. It was one that clicked on and off, so when I would turn it off, I had to slowly walk to the bed, making sure I wasn't running into anything since that room is pitch black. I don't know what time it was, because again, there wasn't a clock in the room, but I just snapped wide awake to the light on in the room. It took me a second, but then I thought to myself, why would I have fallen asleep with the light on? Then I realized that I would not have done that I knew I'd turned the light off. So I got out of bed, turned it off, and then, again, stumbled my way back to bed. I fell back to sleep, and after some time had passed, I snapped awake again to the light on in my room. At the point, after having experienced what happened to me a couple of nights prior, I got out of bed, ran out of the room to my boyfriend's room, woke him up and told him about what happened and asked him to go in and check it out. He seemed freaked and refused. LOL. So I just crawled into his bed and slept soundly. Well, as soundly as you would with a snoring man next to you the rest of the night. I told his mom about what happened that morning, and she said that there are sometimes electrical glitches, which my boyfriend mentioned he never knew or heard about. LOL. I will never forget those nights. I can still feel those presses in my body. Yeah, rightfully so. You know, I'm pretty skeptical about ghosts. I've never seen one in my life, but if I stayed in a haunted house like that, I would probably leave immediately. Our next Reddit post is from Another One Bites the Dust. This happened while I was working as a college student in the mid-90s. The apartment we rented was a converted 2-bedroom house. My roommate and I were in the larger front bedroom, which consisted of the remnants of a wall between the closets of each half of the room. And my girlfriend was in the smaller back bedroom. The first strange thing that happened was that we would frequently hear scratching sounds coming from within the walls of my girlfriend's bedroom. Now, this was an old house, so naturally we assumed that it was mice. The problem was that my girlfriend was very afraid of mice, and whenever these sounds would occur, she would spend all night sitting in our room with the lights on, watching the door to her room as if expecting one to come charging out of the woodwork. We even set traps to try to catch one, but never had any luck. One night around 4 a.m., I was awakened in my bed to what sounded like someone clearing their throat right beside me. I sat up in bed and began listening intently, and I could hear what sounded like heavy footsteps in the room next door. My first thought was that maybe someone had broken in, but why would a burglar be walking around in the middle of the night? As the footsteps continued, I got out of bed and started to quietly make my way toward the other room. As I got closer, I could hear my girlfriend crying out in fear. I pushed open the door to her room and turned on the light. She was sitting up in bed, hugging a pillow, staring straight ahead of her with wild eyes. When she saw me, she beckoned me over to her bed, and I climbed in and pulled her into a hug to try to calm her down. Just then, the footsteps began again, right outside the door. Now, my girlfriend had recently been watching some horror movie about ghosts that used a Ouija board, and she was convinced that we needed to use one to find out who was visiting us in the night. Being a skeptic, I scoffed at this idea, but conceded that it might help to put her mind at ease. So we went to the local corner store, bought one of those cheap plastic boards that comes with the planchette, and brought it back home. We brought the board into my girlfriend's room and set it on the floor between us. I told her, "Okay, let's do this. What do you want to ask it?" She hesitated for a moment before whispering, "Who's there?" Immediately, the planchette began to move across the board to spell out P. Thinking that perhaps it was my girlfriend's imagination, I reached over to stop its movement, but the planchette suddenly shot backward, striking my hand. I quickly pulled my hand away and watched as it continued to spell out, "Please leave," before rocketing away and disappearing under the bed. Now, I'm a pretty rational person, but I was starting to get scared. My girlfriend, meanwhile, was screaming for me to stop the ghost from hurting me. I looked under the bed and, unable to see anything, grabbed the planchette and brought it back onto the board. I calmly asked, "If you're trying to tell us something, then please try again." The planchette moved forward and spelled out, "Help me." My girlfriend and I exchanged frightened glances, not knowing what to say next. We decided to try to be reasonable and asked, "What's your name?" After a moment, the response came, "Martha." I asked, "Is Martha the one who's been haunting this room?" The planchette spelled out, "Yes." And I asked, "Martha, are you here to harm us?" "No," the planchette spelled out, before going silent. From that day forward, Martha never returned. To this day, I have no idea what that planchette was doing under my girlfriend's bed, nor do I know if it was some clever trick of the light or if I actually saw a ghost. But what I do know is that the scratching sounds in the walls never ceased. Well, thank you guys for watching. That whole story is super creepy. If you liked this content, check out my podcast where I publish the exact same episodes. Also, hit that subscribe button because I put out new videos every single day.